Good evening, party people. We're going back to back. Welcome to episode 98 of the On the Diamond and Into the Deep podcast. We are just a few short episodes from 100, where I have an exciting announcement to make. But till then, we got 2 more episodes in between now and then. On today's episode, obviously, I wasn't planning to record today, but I found myself making my next off-season plan, and it was too exciting, too much fun for me to wait to share until next week, especially with me unsure whether I'll be able to record next week. But with that, today is Wednesday, November 19th. It is 6:30 p.m. on the dot, and we have a second off-season plan here to share with you on episode 98. So thank you so much for joining me, and let's get it. Okay, so to begin, obviously, Naylor is already a Mariner. $10 million in 2025. That is what is going to hit the payroll. We've got space to work with, $20-25 million. Once we non-tender Saucedo, which has already happened, and Thornton, we'll have another about $4 million, so it will be roughly $25 million to spend. So my goal with this is to add bats and add arms to the bullpen. Now, there are multiple routes I could have gone with this. Was it one big arm? Was it multiple smaller arms? Was it a mix of a little bit of both? And I traded for for a bigger arm so that it wasn't going to cost as much in terms of the free agency cost. Was I going to focus just on the lineup, just on the bullpen? Was I going to trade a starter? Stuff like that. The route I went with was we were going to trade for a couple of bats, and we were going to add a few relievers. So, the first move I'm going to make is going to be slightly controversial. This is a guy that the Mariners acquired at the deadline to help shore up the back end of the bullpen. They wanted a second lefty alongside Gabe Spire. That guy's Caleb Ferguson. Now, obviously, Caleb Ferguson's tenure in Seattle, so far at least, was not what they wanted when they acquired him in late July. But I don't think they were using him right. And I think expectations for the guy were far too high. This is a guy that is a lefty specialist. He is a middle reliever. He's not a high leverage guy. And again, he should only really face lefties. So, if you have him as your 4th or 5th best reliever, then I don't think that's really the role you're going to have him in. And if you're deploying him in 7th, 8th inning role, that's definitely not, I think, the right location for him. But he is a guy that can shore up the middle to front end of that bullpen, where it's like the Mariners need some help there. And I think that if you give him a full year, he can provide the value to that role that you desperately need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go sign him for a 1-year, $1 million deal. There's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. That's what we're going to go give him. I'm willing to give him $2 million if I have to, or 1.5 if I have to, but I don't think he's going to cost a whole lot. He actually had a decent year too. We'll get into the stats of all the guys I acquired once I say who they all are. But this was a guy that is not a bad arm. He's a mid-leverage arm, and for a team that, yes, they need probably another high-leverage arm, this guy in the mid-leverage range is perfectly fine, especially if it's only costing you $1 or $2 million. So he's going to be the first addition to the bullpen. We'll go through all the bullpen additions first. These are all the only free agents after Naylor, obviously. Second guy I'm going to acquire is another left-handed reliever. This is a guy I talked about quite a bit at the deadline. Guy that was on the Twins, got traded to Texas. This is a guy that can face righties a little bit more than Caleb Ferguson did. This is a guy that's slightly better as a high leverage reliever than that of Caleb Ferguson, but he's not a guy that should be pitching really in the 9th inning at all, and not very often, if ever, in the 8th inning. This is a 6th, 7th inning bridge type of guy. That guy's Danny Coulomb. We're going to give him a 1-year deal worth $2 million. Again, this is a mid-leverage reliever that this one can face some lefties and some righties, and will help shore up that bridge to Spire, Brash, Andres Munoz in the back end of the bullpen, and maybe He can even be a little bit better than what he was in 2025. And he can get back to what he was a little bit more in 2024, where he was a really, really good reliever. So you have two lefties already added this bullpen. Neither are a quote-unquote high leverage guy, but if you add two arms to this bullpen that help in the mid-leverage area, that is building this team up a lot better. That's supporting the floor of this team. Maybe it's not raising the ceiling all that much because it's not crazy raising your talent level necessarily, but it's raising your talent level in a sense of expectation and sort of knowing what you're going to get. And it allows you to maybe pull your starters slightly earlier than you otherwise would have. And to be able to hopefully avoid injury and not use Spire, Bizzardo, Brash a million freaking times over the course of the season to the point where when the middle of October comes and hopefully you're there again, by that point, these guys aren't just gassed. And you have more options in the postseason of guys to throw. So Caleb Ferguson, Danny Coulomb, very similar guys in terms of what they are going to do for your team. But those two guys are going to help your bullpen. They're going to make your bullpen overall better. You don't have to just acquire high leverage guys to make your bullpen better. You can make it better just by adding some mid-leverage relievers. That said, I am going to add a higher leverage reliever. I'm going to add a guy that the Mariners did see in the postseason. I'm going to add a guy that was with the Washington Nationals through the start of last year. Got traded to the Detroit Tigers. If you don't already know, I'm talking about Kyle Finnegan. This is a right-handed reliever that can pitch in the 7th inning. He pitch in the 8th inning. He can pitch, if need be, in the 9th inning. We're going to go give him a 2-year deal worth $14 million, 7-ish per year. And we're going to have him be the capper, the capstone, the cherry on top of the bullpen this offseason. And we're going to acquire these arms through free agency because pitchers are easier for this team to acquire through free agency because of the ballpark you're in. And hitters are where I think you want to spend your prospect capital in terms of trade. So Kyle Finnegan will be the third and final reliever I add to the Mariners for opening day 2026. And he's a guy that can be a more high leverage guy. So now you look at your bullpen, and at the back end of your bullpen, it is Munoz, it is Brash, it is Finnegan, and it is Spire. Your fifth guy of your bullpen is Eric Bizzardo. Your sixth guy is Danny Coulomb. 7 is Caleb Ferguson or Carlos Vargas. Ferguson and Vargas are the final two guys in your bullpen. And you don't have a spot for that pile that you always build every offseason, but there are going to be injuries. There are always injuries. And you hope it's not that back end guys. But there's always injuries, there's always regressions. You don't know if Eric Bizzardo is, or Edward Bizzardo, sorry. I don't know why I keep saying Eric. Whether Edward Bizzardo is not only going to be able to stay healthy throughout 2026, but whether he's going to be the same guy that posted a whip just barely over 1 in 2025. Same thing with Spire. Same thing with Brash. Same thing with Carlos Vargas. There will be openings in this bullpen for that pile to fill, but not having one of those guys be an opening day reliever for you makes your team better. It increases that floor. And it's not something that they have done really all that much with this bullpen. You haven't been going into spring training, into camp, knowing, yeah, this is probably what our bullpen's going to look like. It's been like, well, there's 2-3 spots where we're like, it's a toss-up. And maybe you see Gregory Santos finally come through. Maybe you see Jackson Kowar come through. Other guys like that. Emerson Hancock, maybe he gets switched to the bullpen and he's a long reliever type. But you've added 3 arms to the bullpen, 2 lefties and a righty. And you've made your bullpen better for the entire course of 2026, hopefully. Without spending big capital. In total, you spent $10 million on your bullpen. In my other offseason plan, I also spent $10 million, but that $10 million was on one guy in Devin Williams. I've now spread out that money in between 3 guys, and none of them are as good as I think Devin Williams would be for the Seattle Mariners. But combined, I think they might provide even more value because you have 3 arms that you think, I at least believe, you could trust. If you have to take the ball out of your starter's hand with a 1 or 2 run lead, at least, or even a tie game, in the 6th inning, I would trust one of these guys to come in the 6th inning. I would trust Caleb Ferguson or Danny Coulombe. And I might be alone in the Caleb Ferguson sentiment. But I believe that guy is a good reliever. He's not way up there in age yet. He had a bad month for the Mariners. But he was actually solid before that. People aren't going to remember that because he was tough in the postseason when he pitched, and he had a little bit of a tough ending to the season. But that's also because of the roles he was put in and the position that he was given, not only in terms of the situations he was thrown into by Dan Wilson, but also in terms of the expectations because he was the quote-unquote high reliever acquired at the deadline, when that's just not who he is. And if you acquire him not as that guy, expectations aren't there. Dan Wilson doesn't feel the need to put him into those positions, and all of a sudden this guy's really incredibly valuable for you. He's the 3rd best lefty all of a sudden in that bullpen if you acquire him and Coulombe. And that's a positive thing. This is the 6th, 7th, or 8th guy out of your bullpen. Again, that is a good bullpen. And if Caleb Ferguson is your 7th guy out of the bullpen, and if Danny Coulombe is your 6th, that's a damn good bullpen. And I think this is plenty in the affordability, plenty within the affordability and payroll for this Mariners team. And I think it's entirely possible you could see them do something like this. Do I think it's going to be 3 guys? No, not necessarily. But I think they could acquire 2 guys. And I think that if it's Finnegan and one of those 2 guys, you're plenty happy. You're plenty happy. Because that improves your bullpen and that improves your team. And a bullpen is a key part of who the Seattle Mariners have been over the past 5 years. In the years where their bullpen was the best, 2021, 2022, 2025 even, those are the years that they did the best. They did the most damage. All of a sudden, they trade some of those bullpen pieces, and their bullpen slightly worsens. They don't get random guys out of the pile succeeding, and their bullpen worsens. And what happens to the team? The team itself worsens. So adding 3 arms that are going to improve the bullpen overall improves the entire look of the team, the entire feel of the team. It allows Dan Wilson a little bit more ability to make wrong decisions and maybe get away with it. And I think he's going to be better with it this year. I think he's going to learn. He's going to be able to look back at what he did over the course of the year and learn from it. You have to remember, this was a rookie manager in 2025. And not just a rookie to Major League Baseball. He was a rookie in any sense. He hadn't managed in minor league baseball, let alone college baseball. So you give him more pieces in that bullpen to work with, he's going to naturally be better. And he's going to naturally be better in year 2 compared to year 1. Assuming he can learn from his mistakes. But as a guy that was a catcher, a guy that made it to the epitome of baseball, that made it to American League Championship Series on a very, very good team, and was the starting catcher day in, day out for that team, he knows what it takes to get better and to be the best. And I think that that's something you're going to see from him in 2026. Moving on to some trades and some bats. The first guy I'm going to acquire is Brandon Lowe. This is a guy that has been linked to Seattle a lot recently, over the past few years. This is a guy that has been talked about a lot because he's a left-handed guy that can play second base and has power to his pull side. And that plays in T-Mobile Park. That's part of the reason I'm acquiring him. And you might be saying, well, you're acquiring a second baseman. What happens with Cole Young? I'm acquiring him to play the Jorge Polanco role. This is a guy that is going to mostly play DH for you. He's mostly going to DH for you, and he might slip into second base every once in a while, or if Young starts to struggle a lot and needs some days off. But I'm rolling into opening day with Cole Young as my starting second baseman. And I have another bat coming in, which is part of why I have Williamson and Young in there. But let's say Young slightly struggles. Okay, Lau goes to second base. He's not the best second baseman. Maybe Perry Hill can make him a little bit better. But he also struggles with some injuries, and I think having a DH can help with that, as it did with Jorge Polanco. So I think this is a guy that's similar to Jorge Polanco, but you're going to have to trade for him. So to the Tampa Bay Rays, I am going to send Ty Pete, who we know the Rays have liked, and he had a down year. Don't get me wrong. So his prospect capital isn't as high. But I think the Rays will like that guy. We'll also send them Gregory Santos. They're good with developing pitchers. This is another guy that they might feel like, yeah, I think we can make something out of this guy. And I'm going to send them Michael Morales. Brandon Lau is about $12 million for 1 year. The Rays have no reason really to keep him. He's just eating up some payroll for them. We know they like to get rid of those guys in that spot, and they can get some capital in exchange. I think this is a guy that very likely will be traded over the course of the offseason, and if not at the deadline. And I think it's a guy that the Mariners should be interested in should they not be able to reunite with Jorge Polanco. Because he can play that role. He can play it pretty damn well. He's a different type of hitter maybe than Jorge Polanco is. He's not a switch hitter. He's not going to put the ball in play quite as much. He's going to strike out more. But he has 30-plus home run power that would play at T-Mobile Park. And he fills in an area in your lineup that you need some help with. So for me, I'd have him as your opening day 6 hitter, batting behind Randy in the 5 hole, and I'd have him as your opening day designated hitter. The guy that I'm going to have lead off for this team, I'm also going to acquire through trade. And I don't know what this guy's going to cost, because to me it's even surprising that this team is willing to trade him. But the guy I'm going to go acquire is Mr. FM, Jarren Duran. This guy with 3 years of club control. He's youngish. I think he's 29. He's making only $7.5 million projected this year in his arbitration 2 year. He's got 2 more years of arbitration after this. He's going to go slot in at right field for you. Dom Canzone can DH a little bit, mix in with Brandon Lau. Victor Robles can do a similar thing. You have now 5 outfielders on your roster, all that you trust that you can play, but injuries happen. You have to remember that. And if they all end up banging, then okay, you could go trade one if you really want to. But injuries happen, and you want to have depth there, and this improves your depth by not having to expect Victor Robles or Dominic Canzone to be these super high production guys in the bottom half of your lineup. And it allows for some safety for guys like Cole Young and Ben Williamson, even though he doesn't play those positions, because he is, to me, a more proven hitter than that of Victor Robles or Dominic Canzone. And not that I don't think either of those guys can be good producers for the Mariners in 2026. I think that they can. But to me, I'm nervous going into it with second base, third base, and right field, and DH, obviously, not knowing what I'm going to get from those positions. But you go acquire Brandon Lau, Jarren Duran, and all of a sudden that improves your team. And Jarren Duran, down year 2025. We can't cover that. We can't sugarcoat that. But this is a guy that has an incredible tool in his speed, who is a decent hitter, who has some pop in that bat from the left side, and that maybe if he just simplifies the swing a little bit and gets away from Boston, where there is added pressure, you cannot lie about that. There's added pressure in Boston. Maybe he gets away from that and allows his mental health to be a little bit better, because that's a big piece of who he is as a person and a player. You get him out of that super high pressure environment, and maybe he can thrive. And again, this is a left-handed hitter with pull power. And it's what succeeds in T-Mobile Park. You've seen it with Josh Naylor. You've seen it with Cal Raleigh. The guy just hit 60 home runs. Now he's a switch hitter, but same type of idea. And let's say one of these two guys doesn't work out to the extent you want him to. Okay. Now you have guys that can fill in because of your prospects. And you're not just relying on those prospects to be starting and those guys to all start. Now you have some insurance and some coverage for them. It adds to your depth of your team because you're adding higher pieces, and it pushes some of those guys that maybe you want to start, maybe you think can start, down the pecking order a little bit, and their depth pieces, and they'll get playtime. And this allows Dan Wilson to utilize all 4 spots on his bench, in my opinion. And that's a positive thing. But most importantly, I wanted to look for a guy that could lead off for me. And to me, Jaren Duran is that. He has good speed. He doesn't walk a whole lot. And he hit 285 2 years ago. If he gets back into that with that speed, that's a great leadoff hitter for you in front of Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh, Josh Naylor, Randy Arozarena, and now Brandon Lau. That's a good guy to start off your lineup, and that's a guy, he'll hit a lot of doubles because of that speed. And if Jaren Duran is getting on base in front of Cal Raleigh, Julio Rodriguez, Josh Naylor, Randy Arozarena, like I mentioned, he can cause some chaos on those base paths. And we listened to Josh Naylor yesterday during his press conference talk about the chaos on the base paths and how that's something that he sees as really important. He said that multiple times, a multitude of times. And Jaren Duran is a guy that can bring that. This is a guy that can be a baller. And I think being in that clubhouse might just help him be an even better baller. Being in Seattle might help him do that. Being away from the limelight of the media that Boston is. Now, the package for this guy, it's really difficult. I won't lie, to put together. Packages are always difficult, but for a guy where I don't know how the Red Sox value him, it's difficult to put that together. To Boston, I am going to send Logan Evans, Luke Raley, and Teddy McGraw. Luke Raley is a guy that can hit in the outfield, or can play in the outfield for them, could play a little bit first base, really, even if they need. It's not the greatest first baseman, but same type of idea. He has some power that we've seen. He had a down year, but he was injured. And he just doesn't really have a spot for this Mariners team, and I think he does have some trade value. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. Logan Evans, a guy that could start for the Red Sox even in 2026, and they need some pitching depth. And then Teddy McGraw, who is a piece that if he stays healthy, is a good piece. He's a good prospect. He's a really interesting pitcher. But that's a big if he can stay healthy, and maybe just giving him a little change of scenery can help with that. And maybe Boston likes that. And I think if I were Boston, I would like that, especially if Jaren Duran is the guy you're willing to get rid of. Would it cost more than this? Very possibly. And I'd be willing to pay a little bit more than this. Because I think Jaren Duran would be a really fun, good piece to have in this team. And on this roster. So, with all those additions, Caleb Ferguson, Brandon Lau, Danny Coulombe, Jaren Duran, and Kyle Finnegan, your rotation stays the same. Your bullpen will consist of Andres Munoz, Matt Brash, Gabe Spire, Edward Bazardo, Carlos Vargas, Caleb Ferguson, Danny Coulombe, and Kyle Finnegan. You want to talk about the new guys. You want to talk about Ferguson, who's not really a new guy, but this is a guy that doesn't give up too many homers, 0.28 home runs per 9. Just a quarter of a home run per every 9 inning. That's a home run every, 36 innings-ish? On average, a 1.16 whip. That's a whip. That's 1 1/10 guy on base per inning pitched. That's better than Matt Brash was this year. Better than Carlos Vargas. It was the same as Danny Coulombe, and Coulombe gave up a few more homers, but he's a 2.30 ERA, 25% strikeout rate. Kyle Finnegan, 24% strikeout rate. Whip below both of those guys. Home runs the same as Coulombe. And he's going to walk less guys at only 7.5%. And he underperformed when you look at his FIP compared to his ERA. You add those 3 guys, that bullpen, very strong, very fun. Now the lineup is the most interesting piece. The lineup I would roll with is Jaren Duran in right field. That's a left-handed hitter leading off. Cal Raleigh will be a switch hitter hitting 2. Julio Rodriguez from the right side will hit 3rd at center field. Josh Naylor, obviously, first base, will hit 4th. It's your first baseman hitting from the left side. Randy Arozarena from the right side hitting 5th. Brandon Lau, J.P. Crawford back-to-back. Lefties in 6 and 7. That's your shortstop and your designated hitter. And then the 2 prospects, Ben Williamson and Cole Young, will round it out 8 to 9. You'll go left switch, right, left, left in that lineup. It mixes it up. It allows you to not have a big patch of lefties that you are really scared about. It gives some protection to Cole Young. because you have a right-handed and a better few left-handed hitters in front of him. But if you want to talk about the hitters that you're acquiring, Jarren Duran, 111 WRC plus in 2025. In 2024, he was a 131, almost a 7-win player with 21 home runs, 34 stolen bases, and nearly 50 doubles. His 41 doubles in 2025 would rank first among the Mariners by a significant margin, by 10 doubles compared to the next highest. The next highest was Julio Rodriguez and Randy Arozarena with 31, and he beat out both those guys by 10 doubles. Duran will strike out 25% of the time almost. Brandon Lau, also about 26% of the time. It is going to add some strikeouts to the team, but I think in exchange for the speed with Duran and the power that Brandon Lau can bring, it is well worth it. Lau was a 114 WRC plus in 2025, a 123 in 2024. Slugging 477 and 473 among the 2 years. Doesn't walk a whole lot. Not going to steal a ton of bases, not the most athletic guy, but he's going to hit home runs. 31 home runs in 2025. 21 in 2024 in less games where he was hurt for part of the year. And he's about a 2.5 or 3 win player. He was worth 2 wins 2025, 2.2 in 2024. If he can stay healthy, he's a 2.5 win player in my opinion. Duran, if this is his down year, if this is his floor, 111 WRC plus, he was a 4-win player still. Your first 3 hitters combined for about 18 F4. In 2025. You had the next 2 guys, that's another 6 wins. It is improving your team. It is lengthening your lineup. Does anyone want to deal with a 1 through 6 of Jarren Duran, Cal Raleigh, Julio Rodriguez, Josh Naylor, Randy Arozarena, and Brandon Lau? And let alone what you could get from Cole Young, Ben Williamson, eventually maybe Cole Emerson, and J.P. Crawford? The first 6 guys in your order, for 7 guys, all over 110 WRC pluses in 2025. That is fucking, pardon my language, bonkers. The lowest F4 of those guys was Brandon Lau at 1.7. The next lowest was J.P. Crawford at 2.8. Almost all of those guys are 3-win players or better. That is a bonkers 1 through 7 of your lineup. And then you have 2 spots where you could get even better in Ben Williamson and Cole Young. Cole Young could be a really good player. And if Cole Emerson comes up and he produces like the prospect he's been, I don't know if there's anything stopping this lineup other than injuries. That is a ridiculous lineup. That is something that this team really hasn't seen. I think that is a better lineup than what they were rolling out at the end of this last year. It's close. But with the way Gino was producing, I think this is better. And it will be a little bit slumpy because of some of those strikeouts. It'll be an up and down lineup. But you have 7 guys where it's like, I think you could have 1, 2, 3 of these guys producing at any point in time. And if you have 2+ of those guys producing at a good high level, sky's the limit for this team. And if you get prospects to develop, sky's the limit. And if Canzone repeats what he did in 2025, again, it is allowing for Canzone to have regression that he is definitely naturally going to have. And the regression from Cal Raleigh as well. That is going to come. He's not going to hit 60 home runs again. That is a once in a generation type of performance and season. But this lineup bangs. And I'm so excited about the prospect of this offseason plan. And I like it. It may be even better than my first one. It feels maybe even more realistic. but you're adding more to your bullpen. You're adding more to your lineup. Actually, the same amount of players to your lineup. And it's fun. And it's a really fun plan in offseason. So thank you guys so much for listening to episode 98 of the On the Diamond Into the Deep podcast. I will be back, if not next week, the week after, with episode 99. And then we, again, have a special announcement for episode 100. Till then, though, go M's and peace, y'all.